First thing that happened when I woke up this morning was I could hear a faint sounds, a voice from the radio that I hadn't really turned down, and the first thought I had was, oh my God, I know what the first question is going to be. But to save us all wait, I'll give it instead. How and in what way would you associate the Boston mess with the shadow? And the only thing I could come up with first thing in the morning was, oh my God, I don't know. But then the next thought I had was, well, I have to start at the beginning. What do I know about the shadow? So by the way, you can interrupt with questions anytime, please. You don't have to wait until I'm through with my notes. You can ask anything you want. Yeah. Oh. Thank you, Scott. Did you hear anything? Well, okay. Anyway, let's start at the beginning. The shadow is, as you probably most of you know, is that part of us which we have been told is unacceptable, unlovable, horrid, not worthy, etc., etc. The shadow in itself is neither good nor bad. Whether it is good or bad is in the eyes or opinion of the person who has it and the authority figures around him. The shadow gains and holds power while it stays in the dark, while it stays repressed. When it is repressed, it can choose its own time to erupt. For instance, when we're talking about adults here at this point, when the grown-up is drunk or under the influence of drugs or has loosened himself in some way, then at times like that the shadow can show his muscle, and the human being does or says things nobody expected him to, or things that are rude, aggressive, hostile. And then the shadow goes back and stays quiet for a while. To become a whole person spiritually, we have to make the shadow and its contents conscious. And that is also totally necessary if we are going to become what I think Jung called individuated human beings. There is no way that we can become whole humans without confronting and then getting to know and then finally allying ourselves with our shadow. Now, there are about basically two ways of doing this. One is to undergo a process done with a guide. In this day and age, it's usually a therapist. it's usually a therapist who has undergone the process herself. In my opinion, it has to be a therapist who has undergone the process herself. No one else should try to do this work with a patient. The other way of doing it is bit by bit, as we go through life. It's a funny thing, but the part of us that wants to become whole has ways of sort of tricking us into seeing, understanding that there's something there we don't understand. It'll happen in dreams, especially in what Jung called big dreams. Something will show itself, and we're left wondering, what was that? I think all of us have stories that illustrate an emergence of shadow contents. Again, keep in mind that the shadow is what has been repressed, not what is evil. So very often what has been repressed by parents or the authorities of some people who have authority in our lives might be considered by other people to be creative and even good. There are many examples of this. but basically, yeah.
Could you give an example in your own practice where you might have encountered someone's shadow and what that was like?
Well, most of the encountering of a shadow in the patient that I experienced was in doing actual shadow work. So I don't think I've encountered it unexpectedly. This is because I was dealing with a rather unusual situation. I was working with a hypnotherapist with whom I had actually done shadow work without knowing what it was. I think I told the story in the second book, Tikal. But she asked me, after we'd done our work, to come down to her place and see certain patients of hers who had graduated, you might say, from their presenting problem, whatever it was, and they had been working with her for at least a year. And in her opinion, there was a lot further they could go, and they themselves had told her that they felt there was something more that they wanted to develop, but they weren't quite sure what it was. And in several of these cases, they gave examples that were recognizable as eruptions of the shadow. You know, the most obvious with most people is something like, what happened when I got drunk, you know. So my encounter with those shadow monsters, because that's the way they appear to the patient, was in doing the shadow work. You have to remember that I was not a trained therapist. This was in the early days of MDMA and 2CB, and I was, my friend, the hypnotherapist, and I were developing our own way of using MDMA in particular. and 2CB also, in therapy. And so...
what was a session like with you?
She had 2 long couches, and I call her Ruth in the books. Would sit at one end of the couch, and I would be in the middle or the other end, and the patient would be on the other couch. Now, remember, they already knew how to put themselves in the trance state, and we would use either MDMA or 2CB. It would depend upon the patient. If they were familiar with MDMA, it was used more as an opening, a sort of to relax them into it and to focus concentration. Excuse me. I take pills for arthritis, which make me very dry mouth, so. So we would, the patient would go into the trance state, and then Ruth would lead them. Usually it was the stairway. You know, the upper part of the house was the conscious part, and the stairway was a long one, which very gradually took the patient or client down as many floors as it took to reach the basement. And in the basement was the monster. The shadow monster was always an animal. When it erupted in my own life many years earlier than that, it was a big cat. And there are many big cats. There were also wolves, several large apes, and Ruth, to my great chagrin, had the privilege of doing shadow work with a patient somewhere else in the country where I couldn't be there, and she ran into first and only octopus, which was really when these things go as they should, of course, then you have 8 arms around you lovingly instead of just 2. That was quite an experience. The difference between what the Jungians do and what we developed, I understand that what the Jungians do is that they have the patient see and acknowledge the monster, the beast. And then they can go back upstairs and start understanding, the process of understanding how it got there, why it was the way it was, etc. I have never, I don't remember the beast ever saying anything. The beast is, for one thing, it hates and fears this process. This is something it has tried to avoid all its life. Yeah, it can be exactly like possession. I should go back to perhaps one of the most important points, and that is, no matter how much preparation you have as a patient or client for this confrontation, it is, I believe, one of the most terrifying experiences that a human being can anticipate. It's real horror and terror, because what you're about to do is get up close and personal with a part of you that you actually believe is the real and only truth about who you are and what you are. And the beast itself, that part of you, believes that it is the real you. So to actually go down there and look at it when you've spent your whole life trying not to be aware of it, trying to deny its existence. This is all the unlovable, unacceptable, dreadful thing that you basically are. And no matter how often the therapist tells you, no, this has been a part of you, but it is not the whole. And you'll discover that when we get through. Despite that, that's not what the patient believes. So it takes immense courage to do this. And that is one of the reasons why only a therapist who's gone through it has the right to guide somebody through it. The therapist must be able to say something from personal experience for the patient to be able to believe that she really means it. And so it has to be part of the therapist's experience. What we did, which is different from the Jungian, is we went one step further. We didn't have the patient stand there and acknowledge and take in the sight of the animal or beast, which is always large. We had him step into it and turn around and look out its eyes. The first thing that happens is that all fear vanishes completely. There is no fear left. There's only power. Because that's what has built up in this beast, pure power. And at that point, he is free to step out if he wishes, or stay there a few minutes if he wishes. But he has accomplished what he came to do. And as far as what happens afterwards, well, it's sort of like, childbirth. You have to have some rest, and you have a lot to think about. But I have never heard of a patient who's gone through this the way it should be done, who did not improve and come much closer to wholeness. But you do have to be aware of the fact that all throughout your life you need to double check yourself. You need to take a look at your animal, what is now not an animal but an ally. It still has a presence, a sort of, it is still an entity. And as I wrote in the book, it will never have good table manners, but it's a strong, strong friend, and it's on your side. So basically, that is that's what happens if you do it right. If you do it without the aid of a therapist, it takes a long. I don't know how long it takes. It depends on how much help you get from books, from your own dreams. I mean, there is that part of us that wants desperately to be a whole human being, and it will keep pushing. Not in everybody, but for those who are on a spiritual path of any kind, yes, the spirit does push for wholeness. Are there any other questions? Oh yes, there are, for heaven's sake. I'm not seeing that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What about the danger of consumption by the shadow?
The danger of what?
Consumption by the shadow.
Are you saying being eaten?
Yeah, well, being identifying with it wholly.
Oh, you mean getting stuck in it?
Yes.
There's a very, I've never personally known of a client that did, but there's a very famous person who did get stuck in it because he chose to. And I tell his story and give his name only because he never made a secret of it himself. You've probably, most of you, seen the movie Alien, the original Alien, and you're aware of the name Giger, Giger, who created the alien and everything on that planet. Well, it might not be too much of a surprise to you to hear that he did. I believe he worked with Stan Groff, and he did not, according to Stan, he did not complete the job. The circumstances made it hard for him to get back, but he decided he liked where he was. His shadow was a perfectly comfortable place for him. And if you have seen any of the books of Giger's paintings and sketches, you can see exactly what happened. He became very, very rich and very successful, and as far as I know, was very happy. But he took over his shadow and decided that was the aspect of himself that he preferred. So that's the only case I actually know of. I'm sure there are others. In fact, it's obvious that there are others. Hands up? Yeah.
How do you find someone to do this sort of work?
Okay, well, if you're going to do it with psychedelics, be very hard. But I would really suggest that you don't try to do it with psychedelics. It's not necessary. Hypnosis, the hypnotic trance, is fully as able as any psychedelic to take you where you need to go. As a matter of fact, that's my answer to people who say, where can I find somebody who, a therapist who will work with me with MDMA? I said, you're not, at least not easily and not without trying for many years. The work is illegal, and it is done by many, many people underground. And that's the only way they can keep their license and stay out of jail. This is not a small or light matter. But hypnosis will take you to the same place. And there are many good hypnotherapists. I was told by Ruth, who was prejudiced, and I believe it still, that the best training is Ericksonian. And although she was absolutely one of the most difficult people I've ever known in my life, she was also a superb therapist. Excuse me. That's the leftover of a long cold. So I would say find a good Ericksonian Erickson-trained hypnotherapist, but find one that you like and trust. Not all Ericksonian-trained therapists are the right one for you. You have to try a few of them out. So you can actually do it anytime you want to start. Erickson trained or Ericksonian, I'm misusing the name. I guess it's Erickson trained, right? Somebody's nodding. Good. What? Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. As a matter of fact, I thought for years it was the other Erickson. Yeah. And I ordered 2 books by the other Erickson and thought, oh my God. But I got it straightened out. Milton is the right one. What's the next? I'm not ignoring any of you there. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Tanya? Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a creature of the psyche. It's a part of us which we have been told we mustn't have. And you know, a good example of what would happen if you, let's go back. In order to be a socially acceptable human being, a member of the human tribe, in good standing, you have to be socialized, which means you have to learn that you can't drop a brick on your baby sister just because she's getting too much attention. You can't do the things that you would like to do, many of which are harmless, but a lot of them, a lot are not. You have to learn to repress a certain instincts and certain drives. And so we have to have a shadow. A good example of a little boy who was brought up with a minimal shadow was, I think, the last emperor of China. I'm sure many of you saw that movie, in which it was forbidden to say no to the little boy because he was a god as well as a human, and he was totally unprepared for the world. Poor soul. He did not have enough of a shadow, and you can't be in polite society if you haven't been taught these things. But of course, a great deal of the problem arises in the way certain parents train their children. They make the mistake, as all of us know, of instead of saying that is not a good thing to do, they say you are a bad boy for doing it, and there's a world of difference. So the children who grow up into grown-ups who have trouble are those who have been themselves rejected and treated with anger and hostility, so that they believe they are that part of themselves. It makes all the difference in the world. Let me give you 2 books which I really love. There are a lot of books on the shadow, but anything by Connie Zweig. Connie Zweig. Zweig is Z-W-E-I-G, I believe. She has written Romancing the Shadow, which is beautiful. And anything by, what the heck, I believe I just discovered him, to my shame. Robert Johnson, have I got the right? Yeah. He writes small, compact books which just open the entire world. For instance, Owning Your Own Shadow, Understanding the Dark Side of the Psyche. Robert A. Johnson. And I've got this one book. I was so impressed by it that I made it my gift to all the members of my family, whether they liked it or not. I gave them this book and said, doesn't matter if you have any problems with yourself or not, this is a great read. Hoping they'd all, anyway. I am now on the verge of ordering everything else he has ever written. But Robert Johnson and Connie Zweig. This one is Owning Your Own Shadow, that's Johnson. Connie Zweig is Romancing the Shadow, but she has written more, and Johnson has written many more. You're safe in either hands. Have we filled up 5 minutes now? I'm really sorry to have known you such a short time, but it was nice.